Good morning.
Hey, Yasmin.
How are you?
This is
I'm here
this
just
is
to
a
make
lot more
sure we're
work than I anticipated.
okay. Audio is working.
You're on mute.
Good morning.
Good morning, Erica. Commissioner, chairperson, chairwoman.
I'm having technology problems again. My computers don't, like, sometimes my camera works, sometimes it doesn't. It does not make sense.
Oh no, you might have to bring it in so we can take a look at it. And
But you know what, Yasmin, your state issued computers, cameras working just fine. That's the computer I'm on.
oh, okay.
My own personal computer that for some reason must have like a firewall, or I don't know. When maybe when we have an IT person in house, they can come and solve all my problems.
Good morning, all.
Good morning. It's a beautiful morning. It was nice and cool, but not hot, not too cold, not hot yet.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just perfect. That's why we live here.
It's why we all live here. If we can't all sit and in the Jewish religion kvel about Arizona and all the things that it brings to us, then we're not in the right job.
Good morning.
Morning, Shireen.
Good morning. Although I don't think anybody wants the high 90s so fast. I think that part we could maybe delay it,
Yeah, well, Tucson's a little nicer, so I feel sorry for you up in Phoenix. Shireen, are you teaching classes now? Are you teaching classes live now?
No, we're doing it live online.
Yeah.
So I do a couple live online and the others live online. Maybe in the
I believe there's a big moment. I'm not, sure I'm allowed to talk about this, but isn't there, some change going on, Commissioner Lerner, with your professional life after this semester?
There is. There it is. I am changing
Congratulations.
my life.
What are you going to do?
Well, I'm retiring
Ah.
from full-time teaching. So.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Been there 40 years. So.
You know what? I think the community college system has been so blessed to have you, and Arizona as well. So,
thank you.
On your upcoming, I'm sure you're not retiring.
No, I'll keep going. I've got other things going, but yes. But thank you very much. I appreciate that very much. And for U of A, even though I'm an ASU person, David, go women.
Yeah, Final Four. Big deal. We watched the game last night. It was exciting. Yeah.
Well, I'm a Trojan, so I'm hoping for today, but I got a tall mountain to climb.
Commissioner York, not on this call. You don't admit that publicly.
Well, it's not public yet.
He got under the wire there before we went public.
Exactly.
Safe that way.
Yes.
No, we're actually live.
No, yeah, we're public. It may not be in the official minutes, but we're public.
Okay. Then you're toast.
Oh,
Doug.
wow.
All right.
Okay.
He's in trouble
Morning,
now.
Derek.
Good
morning,
morning, Doug. Dave.
Good morning, everyone.
Yes.
Okay, I believe we have all of our commissioners, Yasmin, and we are represented by, I believe, council. So I apologize. I'm hearing it.
Or
Yeah, we are waiting on Pam, but we do have Caroline and Kyle on the call, I believe.
Yes, and from ADOA, I believe we're also waiting for Rick Hughes and Nicole Sorensen.
Okay. We can wait a couple minutes. The first few items are gonna, I think, be pretty easy. But we'll wait definitely a couple minutes so that we don't run into the possibility that with our more substantive issues, we're lacking counsel and representation. Hi, Nicole. I see Nicole on the line.
Good morning, everyone.
I believe we are well represented now by ADOA, by SPO, the State Procurement Office. We have Kyle. Caroline, are you on the call? I don't see your tile anymore.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. We'll wait another minute for Pam, but otherwise, Caroline, given that you're on the call, I think we'll be able to officially begin.
That sounds fine with me.
Okay, well, I think with that, I think we can begin. It is March 30th. The agenda for the meeting is as follows. 1, call to order and roll call. 1A, call for quorum. It is now 9:02 a.m. on Tuesday, March 30th, 2021. I call this meeting of the Independent Redistricting Commission to order. For the record, the Administrative Assistant Yasmin will be taking roll. When your name is called, please indicate that you are present. If you're unable to respond verbally, we ask that you please type your name. Yasmin.
Vice Chair Watchman,
Present.
Commissioner Lerner,
Present.
Commissioner York,
Present.
Commissioner Meal,
Present.
Chair Newberg.
Present.
And then also we have legal counsel from the Attorney General's office. We have Pamela Pizer, who just joined by phone, Caroline Guerrero, Kyle Cummings, and Jessica Klein. And from ADOA, we have Rick Hughes, Nicole Sorensen, and Carrie Wells, and myself. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for joining us. Please note for the minutes that a quorum is present. Item 1B, call for notice. Yasmin, was the notice and agenda for the commission meeting properly posted 48 hours in advance of today's meeting, but today 72 hours, given that we will do a ratification process?
That is correct, yes, before 72 hours it was posted.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to item number 2, approval of the minutes from last week, March 23rd, 2021. We have general session minutes. We have executive session minutes. As a reminder, video recording fulfills statutory requirements. We need a motion to approve that you have reviewed the video recording as our minutes. I open up any discussion, or we can open it up to a motion.
Commissioner York, I motion to approve the minutes as posted.
Do we have a second?
Commissioner Lerner seconds.
Any further discussion? With that, we'll do a vote on approving the general session and executive session minutes of last week. Vice Chair Watchman,
Aye.
Commissioner Meal,
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner,
Aye.
Commissioner York,
Aye.
Commissioner Newberg is an aye. And with that, the general session and executive session minutes of March 23rd of 2021 have been approved. And as a reminder to the public, moving forward and hopefully even beginning next week, it is our intention to be able to post written minutes for ease of consumption of the agenda. With that, we'll move on to item number 3, opportunity for public comments. Public comment will open for a minimum of 30 minutes and remain open until the adjournment of the meeting. Comments will only be accepted electronically in writing on the link provided in the notice and agenda for this public meeting and will be limited to 3,000 characters. Please note, members of the commission may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. And with that,
Madam Chair, I
yes,
apologize. Did we approve the executive session minutes or just the general session minutes?
we did them together, Yasmin, this
Okay,
time.
apologize.
And so, yeah,
I apologize for that.
that's okay. Thank you. With that, we are going to use our discretion and move to number 8 in order to take advantage of the time that we have from our ADOA staff and the experts from the State Procurement Office. And so with that, item number, hold on, I need to find my notes. Okay. Item number 8, discussion and possible action on options for securing legal counsel. All of the commissioners have now had sufficient time to review the proposals. I really want to thank all of the firms who submitted, highly thoughtful, competent proposals that I think provided great education. And reference for all of us to really understand the history and so many of the nuances of the legal process. It's now time for us to reconvene and think again what option we want to move forward with now that we've had the benefit of perusing those proposals. I'd like to remark for the public, the commission may vote to go into executive session, which will not be open to the public for the purpose of discussion or consideration of by law from public inspection, including the receipt and discussion of information or testimony that is specifically required to be maintained as confidential by state or federal law, ARS 38-431.03A2, as well as for the purpose of obtaining legal advice related to the RFP process, ARS 38-431.03A3. With that, again, our options remain open to continue with the Attorney General's office representation, option A, option B, hiring legal counsel from the list that is already procured, or option C, continue with the RFP and procurement process. I'd like to open it up for discussion.
This is Commissioner Meal. Could someone remind me which of the firms were not a part of the Attorney General's procurement process, or the group, the ones that were not already a part of the government process?
Yeah, Commissioner, this is Rick Hughes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so the two firms that were not on the Attorney General's list for election laws, etc., were Kentelme and Brown and Coppersmith Brockelman and Nielsen Merksamer. Those last names, Coppersmith Brockelman and Nielsen Merksamer, that was a combined proposal. So those two firms, those two proposals are from firms that were not available on the Attorney General's attorneys list.
So Cantleme and Coppersmith?
Yeah, Kentelme and Brown was one, and then Coppersmith Brockelman with Nielsen Merksamer. And my apologies to the extent that I've not pronounced those names correctly.
Thank you. And Commissioner Meal again, if we go forward with option C and continue with the RFP procurement process, is it a requirement that we go through the ranking system, or is it an option for the commission as to whether we go through the detailed ranking system?
Commissioner Meal, that's actually a loaded question, and one in which I think there are multiple opinions on. And given the sensitivity,
Maybe more appropriate for executive session then.
it's not even that. To be perfectly honest, it's even beyond an executive session. And I think the deepest, most important question for the five of us right now is to look at the law firms and say, are our top choices already procured? Because if they are, in my mind, the control and room to maneuver if we go with option B and take back process. And just, you know, I'm opening it up to all of you, and I'd like to hear your feedback. You know, I've picked 4 top firms. I could narrow it down even more if I needed to. And as much as I appreciated all of the proposals, they are all on the state list. And so personally, I'm very comfortable going with option 2, but it is my motivation to have this commission be really comfortable with this hire or hires. And so I'm really asking, you know, you've ranked them. You must have numerical markers of 1 through 9. So are your top 2 to 4 already procured? I think that's really the most important question right now.
Madam Chair, this is Vice Chair Watchman. There, echo. In response to your question, Madam Chair, for me and my picks are not on the list, and so I am inclined to continue with option C, which is basically continue the ranking in the process. And so, you know, very simple answer to your question. Option C is the approach that I'd like to take.
So you've chosen the one or both of the law firms that were not procured with the state.
Right, and I'm going off of what we've been talking about, and that is 2 law firms. So both, yes. To answer your question, both firms, yes.
Okay, you know, commissioners, I want to make sure we have a thoughtful conversation here. Option 3 is the choice that was chosen by the last commission. And it led, and we are a unique body, it led to difficulties because the intent of option 3 is an empirical numerical process. It's not subjective. It's not meant for the 5 of us to sit and deliberate about who would best represent us. We all sit in isolation and rank based on these empirical markers, and the highest score wins. And for us to override that empirical process, legally, I'm sure, you know, we could fight our way to do that. But the question is, do we want to subject ourselves to that? And so I'd like to hear from all 5 commissioners, you know, what your preference of the law firms are. If the majority or top law firms not having been procured already, then obviously we'll go that route. But if the majority of the commission, you know, has, you know, their preferred law firms already contracted with the state, the advantages to us being able to make a deliberate, thoughtful decision is significant.
Chairwoman Newberg, if I could just jump in, I
Yes,
just wanted
please.
to invite the AG's office, Jessica Klein perhaps, and Rick and Carrie if they wanted to weigh in. I want to make sure that this discussion of a preliminary rankings of the responsive bidders in the RFP is appropriate to be doing in public session. I just want to be careful.
Right.
You know, we've discussed option B would be appropriate to discuss in public session, but there are some things that the evaluation committee should not be discussing. So I just wanted to make sure that we're good there before we proceed.
Or if it's okay with you, Chairwoman Newberg, I can step in here just for a
Please.
second. All I want to say in the public session on this point is that I welcome Rick and Carrie, Mr. Hughes, Ms. Wells, to speak to this further. If you'd like legal advice regarding the two different options and what the sort of risk benefits are, that's something I'd be more comfortable discussing with you in executive session. It's why I haven't spoken up at this point.
Chairwoman Newberg, I would encourage us to go into executive session and have a little more discussion on 2 versus 3 or B versus C. And get legal advice on the pros and cons of those. So
I will entertain a motion.
I move that we move into executive session.
Do I have a second?
I second that, Commissioner Werner.
Okay, with that, a quick vote. Vice Chair Watchman,
Aye.
Commissioner Meal,
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner.
Aye.
Commissioner York,
Aye.
Commissioner Newberg is an aye. And with that, we will move to executive session in order to get legal advice about what our options are. It is hard to give an estimate for the amount of time, but I would guess, maybe 15 minutes or so, but no guarantees. Okay, I see that our team is slowly assembling. We are waiting for Commissioner Watchman. I see Commissioner Watchman, at least letter D. There we have Commissioner Watchman, Commissioner Meal, Yasmin, Pam, our council. With that, I think we can reconvene in the public session. Thank you for everybody's patience. That was a constructive opportunity to get some confidential legal counsel. Just so the public is aware, you know, with open meeting laws, the 5 of us are not able to convene with counsel in any kind of private way. This is the only time we have the ability to get together and ask some of these very challenging, complicated legal questions. So I know it's frustrating at times to not know exactly, you know, what's being discussed and when we're going to go live, but you know, these are complicated, sensitive conversations that we need to have. With that, let's resume the conversation about our strategy with moving forward with securing legal counsel. I open it up to feedback from my fellow commissioners about pursuing option A, B, or C, and the reasons for why you might support such a step.
This is Commissioner Meal. I make a motion that we move forward with option B. And I do so because of some of the advice we heard from council, where option C is faced with a more cumbersome process and a lengthier process than we had anticipated. And notwithstanding, 2 firms then would not be in the running under option B. And those are 2 very, very good firms. We still have 7 firms that we think very highly of that we can consider.
Okay, and would you like to add, Commissioner Meal, I know this is important to you, that as we move forward with option B, if at any point we felt that we weren't comfortable with, you know, what we're learning, that we can at any point resort back to option C again?
I think I would change the motion that would simply say, let's proceed with option B, and let's keep the RFP under option C still open and not close it.
Okay. Do I have a second of that motion before we?
This is Commissioner Lerner. I'll second.
Okay. Discussion. I'd like to hear from the commissioners, you know, your reasons for thinking this before we move into a vote, the pros, cons, and what's on your mind.
Well, this is Commissioner York. We had 9 very capable firms apply for this RFP. Based on our discussion in executive session and my further knowledge of the procurement process, the state has already vetted 7 of our candidates. And so from my standpoint, I think the safest thing and strategy is to consider the state's vetting process. I don't perceive myself as an expert in legal firm analysis, and so I am comfortable with proceeding in option B.
Any other dialogue? Commissioner Watchman, you had mentioned earlier your attraction to a couple of the firms. You know, do you want to share some thoughts, opinions?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, my top 2 firms were not on the list that the AG has. But in the interest of time and hearing from our legal counsel in the executive session, I'm okay with moving with option B, provided that if we run into any challenges or situations that we do have, and it is in the motion to go back to option C. And so, you know, again, in the interest of time, I think it's important. So I'm okay and comfortable with the motion at this point. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Lerner. I just want to concur with everything that's been said. by the other commissioners in terms of the reasoning for why we might move to option B.
Okay. I concur. With that, we'll take a vote on the motion to move forward with option B, understanding that the RFP process will remain open if we were to change course.
Commissioner, I do believe we need a second.
Oh, I thought Commissioner Lerner had seconded
Oh,
that.
she did. That's
for
right.
our-
She did.
Before our discussion.
You're right.
Yeah, we changed things up a little bit, Commissioner York, with discussion and I'm just keeping you on your toes.
That'll grow.
Okay, with that, I think we're ready for a vote. Vice Chair Watchman,
Aye.
Commissioner Meal,
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner,
Aye.
Commissioner York,
Aye.
Commissioner Newberg is an aye, and with that, we are going to move forward with option B, going the direct route with hiring a legal counsel from the list that is already procured from the Attorney General's office. With that, do we want to move into a conversation about which firms we would like to invite for oral presentations? I believe we do have the time on the agenda today with looking forward about what's in store for us. I'm prepared to have that conversation if my fellow commissioners are prepared to have the conversation. And remember, this will all be done in public session.
Yes.
I'm prepared to have the conversation as well.
I'm ready.
Okay. Council, I just want to make sure, just out of an abundance of caution, given now that it's, public session and we are moving forward with firms that are already procured, we have the full authority to speak clearly about the name of the firm and to talk freely about what we see as the strengths and weaknesses.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. Would anybody like to start by sharing amongst the 7 firms that have been procured by the state, firms that they are attracted to, strengths, weaknesses, who you'd like to invite for oral presentation?
Well, this is Vice Chair Watchman. I'll start. I'd like to invite Osborne Maladon. And then Ballard. I don't have all the names written down, but the second firm, Ballard.
Ballard and Spar.
Yes, Ballard and Spar. Yes.
Okay. Would you like to share what you were attracted to about those firms, strengths, weaknesses, or anything else about your proposal?
Well, as you indicated, Madam Chair, all great firms, and I have a little bit of experience in hiring law firms in some of my previous jobs. So, a couple of things that struck me for the 2 firms that I'd like to advance to interviews is their knowledge of the Voter Rights Act, if you will, experience in litigation in the state, and this applies to both firms. Just the depth and the breadth of their experiences, their credentials, and so my ranking has these 2, near the top but not the top, and so I understand going with option B, my top one is not on the list, and I'm okay with that. So I think that they're just like all the other firms, great firms, but I'd like to talk to, again, Osborne and Ballard, and then go from there. So thank you.
Other thoughts?
You're muted.
Commissioner Meal, I share Commissioner Watchman's interest in the firms he mentioned, but I would add to the list Snell, Bergen, and Statecraft would be three firms that I would have an interest in, and I'm not sure if it had to be only two and not three. I'm not sure which ones I would suggest. I'd like to hear from others, but I saw real positives in each of the applications from Snell and Wilbur, Bergen, and then Statecraft.
Okay. Commissioners York and Lerner.
I was pointing to you, Doug. I'll go after you.
Well, you know, this is a tough, I mean, the competency of all 70s is pretty crazy. And so it's a little overwhelming when you start to read all the experiences. I mean, some of these proposals were 40 pages plus. But I guess I narrowed it down to Schnell and Wilmer and Statecraft based on their current involvement with the government process. And so those are my two suggestions for presentations.
And I also had Ballard and Spar and Osborne and Maladon as top ones. I also had Statecraft that I'd like to hear from as well. And then, as I'd mentioned earlier, there were a couple from the other lists that we're not looking at. But in terms of my highest rankings, those are the ones that I would be interested in seeing.
Okay, well, my top four were Ballard, Spar, Snell and Wilmer, Osborne, Maladon, and Hinshaw and Culbertson. So we all kind of like in our earlier process, we each have a few, individual interests. It sounds like there is general consensus, at least three people, and we're not voting. We're just engaging in dialogue. Ballard Spar, I believe, had the interest of three people. Osborne, Maladon, Snell and Wilmer, Statecraft. And I believe that might have been the only ones that had the interest of three commissioners. Am I correct?
Yes, that's what I heard as well. Those four.
With that, how do we feel about inviting four firms for an oral presentation? We can, of course, cap it at a time frame that we feel is appropriate. Do we want to narrow the list down more, or would we like to invite an invitation to present to us?
This is Commissioner Meal. Like those four, if we're willing to have five, I would invite Bergen. With Scott Freeman's experience on the commission, I'd be interested in hearing from him, even if as a commission we decided that that's not who we want to use.
This is Commissioner Lerner. I think my preferences, and again, mostly, again, I concur with everybody in terms of the fact all were qualified and great firms. But my preference would be to do four firms, because that seems to be where we have some consensus as part of that versus bringing in additional.
And I would like to say I encourage all the commissioners. I mean, this is a learning process. It was an abundance of information that we consumed this past week. It doesn't preclude any of us from furthering our own journey of learning and trying to understand, the past, what decisions are ahead of us. So even if it's not publicly presenting to us, it doesn't preclude us from, learning.
This also,
If the consensus of the group is to go with four, then I certainly will be comfortable with that.
So this is Commissioner York. I'd like to propose a motion to invite the four aforementioned firms to an oral presentation. Is it next week? The 6th of April.
That would be wonderful if they're available. The four firms being Ballard, Spar, Osborne, Maladon, Snell and Wilmer, and Statecraft.
I will second. This is Commissioner Winter. I'll second that motion.
Further discussion? With that, we'll take a vote. Vice Chair Watchman,
Aye.
Commissioner Meal,
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner,
Aye.
Commissioner York,
Aye.
Commissioner Newberg is an aye, and with that, we will invite four law firms, Ballard, Spar, Osborne, Maladon, Snell and Wilmer, with us next Tuesday if they are available. With that, we do not need to move to item number 9, given our current trajectory. We will move back to item number 4.
Chair Newberg, can I just ask
Yes.
a quick question? Do
Please.
we have a structure for that meeting? Are we going to come up with questions? What are we suggesting?
You know, that's actually good point. We do need to plan for that meeting, and I'm presuming that with this agenda item, it's, you know, allowed. We will, what I would suggest is similar to the last time. Maybe we generate some questions that we think are in line with what's relevant to their experience as it relates to the Voting Rights Act, redistricting. You know, if you look at the RFP, I think it helps us kind of track the types of questions that we want to dive into a little more deeply. And we can certainly try to, you know, articulate a list of questions and disseminate them that we can ask. I don't know, counsel, are there any legal constraints in terms of these oral presentations that we ought to be aware of?
I'll defer to Ms. Klein on that for specifics. I believe that the biggest constraint is that there's no basis to have discussion in executive session, but I'll again defer to Ms. Klein.
And I think Rick and Carrie can talk a little bit more about what's typically done in these sessions. But it's my understanding you want to ask the same questions to each law firm. So developing a list in advance is helpful. And that's just to keep things as fair as possible.
This is Commissioner Meal. Chairwoman Newberg, it worked well last time for you to generate an opening list of questions and have it circulated to all of us through Yasmin. And then each of us can add questions or suggest added questions back through the main, back again into Yasmin. And I think, I believe that we're in a position where we've not yet said whether we will end up with one firm or two law firms. And so I'd certainly encourage a question, several questions in that regard. One would be to have each law firm make their pitch as to whether they could adequately represent both sides. And then secondly, to ask each law firm, if two law firms were selected, can they get along with the other ones that are listed, or are there ones they would get along better or think they would work more effectively with? So I would suggest those as part of the questions.
Absolutely. Do we feel that 30 minutes? I actually am just throwing this out there. I have no idea with receiving legal. I mean, they could probably talk for hours. You know, let's give them a guideline. I mean, you know, how much time do we want to hear from them?
I think 30 minutes, Chair Newberg. I think 30 minutes would be great.
In my head, it was 25 and 5 minutes of deliberation.
I'm okay with that too.
Ms. Klein, you're on mute?
Yes, I realized that afterwards.
Okay.
Commissioner Newberg, if you do have Mr. Hughes and Ms. Wells from the State Procurement Office here, they might be able to give you sort of general guidelines for these oral presentations. That could be useful for the commission.
Well, I would say this is a little different area of procurement than, we generally deal with. And to me, though, when you suggest 30 minutes, and I know I heard another member say even 25, I mean, that's a pretty short time frame. And I'm thinking you probably have half a dozen at least questions that are probably going to have some meat to them. I think, I think you would see them squirm a lot if you told them they only had 25 minutes to speak. That would be, I would say maybe an hour would be more appropriate, or 45 minutes. I don't know. Carrie, do you have some thoughts about it?
What came to mind was it might make sense to give them questions ahead of time, or give them topics. Not say, here's your questions exactly, but hey, there's certain portions of your response, and we'd like you to speak to those, and let them have a heads up so they can have something prepared. In theory, that might mean they're going to be a little more succinct with their answers, but you never know. They may want to elaborate, but if you do give them a window, say he would like to knock this out in 30 minutes, I don't see why they wouldn't make an attempt to be respectful of that.
I would also say that regarding the time, if you want to have 4 firms in, you want to have them in all on the same date, so that, one firm or 2 firms don't have like extra time to prepare, because that's a matter of fairness. So they really should all come on the same date. So then, given your schedule, it's got to fit within your overall meeting schedule, whatever other agenda items. And so if it comes to be that, one round of this isn't sufficient, you could always, have a second round of questions for the same 4 firms, or maybe narrow it down to follow-up questions for 2 of the finalists of the 4, however you want to do it. But you should at least have the initial question session with the 4 firms, which probably brings you close to this half hour that you suggested. And then I would just say, that makes a lot of sense to me, to make it a half hour, or if you could stretch the time a little more than that, not quite to an hour, maybe give a little more time. And like Carrie said, questions in advance help them, prepare, and should be fine.
This is Commissioner Meal. I might suggest that we schedule the interviews 45 minutes apart and try to keep the interviews to 35 minutes, and then have time for deliberation and a break.
This is Commissioner Werner. I think that's a good plan. I think that because we've already read their proposals, we don't want them just to repeat what we've already read. And so that's part of my feeling about not needing as much time, is that we want to hear some things that we don't know about them. I think the 2 questions Commissioner Meal mentioned are good and interesting ones that we could learn from. And then there will probably be some others. So I think 30 to 45 minutes should be sufficient in that regard.
I'd like to suggest that all commissioners within 48 hours submit suggested questions that you'd like to see asked, so we can put a comprehensive list together and try again, as suggested. Each firm may have unique questions, but for the majority of the oral presentation and interview session, to be able to ask uniform questions, I think is helpful.
Madam Chair, this is Vice Chair Watchman. I'm inclined to support Commissioner Meal and Commissioner Lerner no more than 45 minutes. I'm not, as far as the questions, they're already on contract with the nation, and so, I don't think it's necessary. But that we do advance questions. I think we should ask questions based on what we generated. But if my fellow commissioners want to list the questions that we give them in advance, that's fine. But to me, they're already on contract with the state. We're looking for anything new to add to that, and so they got to be ready, just like they got to be ready in front of a judge. And so the judge doesn't give them pre-qualified questions, test them in front of us, and so to make sure that they're ready. I don't think giving them advance notice of what we're going to say would serve my interest in trying to evaluate them. But 45 minutes is a good time. We can certainly ascertain their qualifications and anything that's new that could be relevant in our final deliberation. A few of my thoughts. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're ready. This was a good substantive conversation, and we look forward to hopefully meeting with the firms next week if they're able to accept our invitation. Any further discussion on legal counsel? Okay, with that, we will now move to item number 4, discussion on public comments received prior to today's March 30th, 2021 meeting. In terms of, and by the way, thank you to all of our SPO, ADOA, council employees who participated in supporting us all along the way. We really appreciate you. Okay, with that on public comments, again, they're pretty consistent, more opportunity for public comment, which will be forthcoming when we fill out our staff and can make some, amendments to our website. I think there was some public comment about disappointment about a lack of consensus in the hiring of the executive director position. I recognize that's, hard. And as a community, we'd like to see consensus. I'd like to just remind all of us, this is a marathon. We are just starting to build a team. We seek to, build a diverse team that adds a lot of different talents and perspectives. And let's keep our eyes on the long-term goal, which is drawing the lines. And so I just want to, reiterate to the community that I hear your comments, and that we are as committed as ever to having a transparent, legitimate process that engages as many people as possible. With that, if there's any other feedback from my commissioners about public comments that we've heard to date.
This is Commissioner York. The only feedback I give is that, we read these every week. We understand the state of Arizona's concerns. We are all here to represent different factions of the state. And so some decisions might not be totally in line with everyone's belief, but for our standpoint, we're representing the factions that have chosen us. And so with that, I think we're trying hard to be independent, but we will continue to sort of march on.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is ratification, review, discussion, and possible legal action. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.05B, the Commission intends to ratify legal action that may have been taken in violation of open meeting law at the Commission's January 21st, 2021 public meeting. Specifically, at the January 21st meeting, the public meeting, the Commission took action on the following agenda item. It was agenda item number 2, approval of minutes from the January 14th, 2021 public meeting and executive sessions. In reviewing the materials related to the pending open meeting complaint, an issue connected to the approval of the January 14th meeting was observed. During its January 21st, 2021 public meeting, the commission experienced technical difficulty, believe it or not, with its YouTube live streaming service that prohibited public access to a portion of that meeting. During that technical difficulty period, the commission voted to approve the public session and executive session minutes for the January 14th, 2021 meeting. As a result, the vote and approval were not made available to the public, nor was it captured in its January 21st, 2021 video meeting minutes. Although there is no requirement to approve meeting minutes, to maintain transparency and consistency with our current practice to approve meeting minutes, we will be ratifying that legal action today. The public may obtain a detailed written description of this ratification on our website, irc.az.gov. With that, there are 2 steps to this ratification. Step 1, verify the review of the materials. We need to poll each member of the commission to determine whether you have reviewed the detailed written description of the deliberations, consultations, decisions, and actions taken by the commission at the January 21st, 2021 meeting, and the approved public session and executive session meeting minutes for the January 14th, 2021, attached to the agenda of today's meeting, and whether you believe that you feel comfortable ratifying the legal action taken at the January 21st, 2021 meeting. When I call your name, please answer yes if you have reviewed the materials and believe that you feel comfortable ratifying the legal action taken at that meeting, or answer no if you believe that you are not comfortable ratifying the legal action taken at that meeting without reviewing the materials. I will now call upon the commissioners by name to say yes or no if you have reviewed the material. Vice Chair Watchman.
Yes, I have.
Commissioner Meal.
Yes.
Commissioner Lerner.
Yes.
Commissioner York.
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Newberg is abstaining. I was not part of these deliberations. With that, we will move to agenda item number 2, which is to ratify the legal action. I need a commission member to move that we ratify the following legal action taken by the commission at the January 1st, 2021 commission meeting. To quote, the review, consideration, and vote to approve the public session and executive session minutes from the January 14th, 2021 meeting. Do I have somebody to move to ratify that legal action?
This is Commissioner Lerner. I would move to ratify that action.
Do we have a second?
Commissioner York, second.
Commissioner York, that was a second for the transcription. With that, we'll do a vote. Commissioner Vice Chair Watchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Meal.
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner.
Aye.
Commissioner York.
Aye.
Commissioner Newberg abstains with a 4-0. The ratification is passed. And so if there are no further questions on agenda item number 5, we will now move to agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action on executive director and other potential administrative support positions and duties of all IRC staff positions. As an update, Brian Schmidt, our new executive director, will start on Monday, April 5th. One of his first tasks will be hiring an executive assistant and getting his team in place. Second to that, it will be to hire a public information officer person. That position has been posted. Yasmin has sent that announcement to all the commissioners. I encourage the commission and the public and the media. This is an opportunity to solicit great applications for an employee that's going to play a central role to our commission. The public information officer will be a central cog in our communication effort with all the different communities of interest. And I'd also like to mention, given that we have put a pause on advertising for a deputy director position, this will be a senior staff position that will be, I think, an essential partner to our executive director. And so, you know, to the extent that we make decisions and vote to, you know, interview and hire people, we are dependent upon, you know, the selection of people that apply to be part of our process. And I just really hope that we see a robust selection of candidates that apply, because I think that, you know, this will be, I think, a meaningful position in this commission.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is Yasmin. We have not posted the position yet. That was just a position description. The announcement, I actually just sent that out to you just so you can look it over and we can finalize. Once that's finalized, then we will post it as soon as possible. We will post it by or earlier than April 1st, and I believe we said it was going to close on the 15th.
Yes. Okay. I apologize. It's not quite posted, but it only gives applicants more time to get their materials in place.
Chair Newberg, I have a question about the hiring of the assistant.
Yes.
Are we going to have a subcommittee that works with our executive director, maybe to look at applicants? How do you envision the process?
Thank you, Commissioner Lerner. This is actually open for our conversation, which we began last week, and we don't necessarily need to determine today, but you know, starting as early as next week, we need clarification. Our executive director does need guidance about what ability he has to move forward with hires and what level of scrutiny we want to have and what level of oversight. You know, I do know based on personal conversations that Brian is committed to hiring a diverse staff as it relates to ethnic diversity, political diversity. He and I both, you know, share a disdain for groupthink and you know, believe that better decision making happens when there's robust participation and dialogue. But with that, you know, it's incumbent on the five of us to determine what level of oversight we want.
So this is Commissioner Lerner. So I'm not tied to any particular process, but one suggestion would be to have a subcommittee of the commission, 2 members perhaps, who review applicants with the executive director and discuss sort of the top applicants and perhaps then select from that group. And then either the commission as a whole could interview or that subcommittee could interview and then bring to the whole commission their recommendations, but something in that order versus having all of us have to do that. But I'm okay with any approach, but it's just a suggestion that the executive director to review the applicants for the different positions.
If I could just interject here, this is Pamela Pizer. To the extent the commission decides to go with a subcommittee, one important consideration will be the number of commission members that participate. If you do less than 3, meaning 1 or 2, then it clearly avoids any potential open meeting problems. Now, of course, that doesn't stop somebody from complaining about an open meeting problem, but you will clearly not be creating a quorum.
Particularly if it's a commissioner on each side of the aisle. But Pam, thank you for bringing that up. That's, you know, I love the idea. It takes a step away from public scrutiny. I mean, and so And I love the idea of engaging my fellow commissioners in the nitty-gritty of the work.
Madam Chair, this is Vice Chair Watchman. I'm inclined to support Commissioner Lerner's recommendation for search or not a review committee, because you mentioned, that Mr. Schmidt will be hiring his team. I think it's our team.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not just his team, and so we should be a part of that process. And so I'd be even inclined to go to the next step, and the top candidate that perhaps the committee and the director feel comfortable with, that we as a commission give the blessing either by a vote or head nod, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And so because I think it's important that we keep unity, consensus, and so we should all be a part of hiring our team. And so, but having said that, you mentioned the next course of action is administrative assistant. Is what else do we have to put on the list? The PIO, and we have the deputy on hold right now. So we have 2 positions that we're going to be looking at. Okay. Just
Right.
want to
And there is an IT, and that I think is a little more flexible, maybe even contracting when there's specific needs. That is something that's out there. Obviously, we've had so many technological problems. I think if we had an IT specialist that might help us, I have a feeling that's not going to be as sensitive.
Okay, so I support Commissioner Lerner, and and you mentioned maybe 2 folks from each side of the aisle. I'm still trying to understand what that means, because but having said that, a 2-member review team of the commissioners will support our director, and we can move forward and try to find the best candidate, and then we all as a commission can decide if that's the right one to move forward. Thank you.
I really like this idea. So who wants to serve?
Well, Commissioner Chair Newberg, I'm happy to serve on that hiring, which is part of why I suggested it. But no, I'm happy to serve on that. But if somebody else wants to, but I'd like to serve with some, obviously.
I will nominate Shireen and Doug to serve on that subcommittee.
That's a good way.
Yeah, this is Commissioner York. Great. I don't have a problem with reviewing the applicants. I don't feel comfortable making the final decision. I'd like to provide 3 finalists for each position and then present those to the commission.
Well, I also want to say, just, we don't want to handcuff our executive director. I mean, to think that we need to, review each and every hire and go through all the applicants. I mean, we want a level of oversight and judgment. So, but let's also be sensitive to giving him a little room.
Commissioner, one of my main considerations would be the opinion of our executive director on the applicants and who he thinks he could work well with. That would be a very, very high consideration on my part.
Well, we have 42 applicants for the executive assistant job. So
there are options.
Okay, this is Commissioner Lerner. It was my opinion too that we wouldn't handcuff the executive director. We'd provide input and we wouldn't narrow it down to 1 or 2, but it might be 3 or 4. But certainly the commission as a whole should hear that as well, and we want to hear from the executive director. I think it's just helpful. We've been working together now for a couple of months. It's helpful to get the input. I think we have a sense of what our needs are as a commission, whereas he's coming in very new to this. So I think it would be helpful from that perspective. And that's really where I was thinking of providing some input. So I agree that we don't want to do just one, Doug. So, we'll narrow it down to a few.
Okay, so with that, go ahead, Commissioner Watchman.
Vice Chair Watchman, I'm trying to understand handcuff. I'm not sure that's the right word, but I'm inclined to offer strong guidance just because, I'd like to make sure that our new director, proves himself, at least to me, because I wasn't supportive of him, and he seems to be a nice guy and qualified, and so I'm inclined to offer strong guidance until a point where we give him free reign. And so I wouldn't call it handcuff. We work hand in hand with him because, as you mentioned earlier, Madam Chair, this is a collaborative effort. We're all in this together, and so we're going to be a family for the next year, and so we all have to basically pay attention to each other and offer guidance. So and I want to put some of my comments in regarding handcuffing. So thank you.
I agree. We are family. And absolutely, I think this all sounds very reasonable and something that I think Brian is going to be very comfortable with. So with that, do we want to have a motion to support a subcommittee of Commissioners York and Lerner to serve as just some guidance to our executive director with bringing recommendations to the broader committee about hires?
Commissioner Meal, are we having, is Brian going to be part of that subcommittee? So be a 3-person subcommittee?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think he should be.
Yes.
I'll move. I'll so move. The way you expressed it was perfect, so I'll just follow that.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Aye. Commissioner York.
Okay, with that, we'll do a quick vote of creating a subcommittee of York and Lerner with Brian Schmidt to provide some general oversight and a vetting process for hires. Vice Chair Watchman, a vote.
Aye.
Commissioner Meal.
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner.
Aye.
Commissioner York.
Aye.
Commissioner Newberg is an aye, and with that, we have a system in place for hiring with a subcommittee to provide guidance for our executive director. With that, I believe we can move on to agenda item number 7, which is discussion and possible action on data census delay and ways to mitigate its disruption. I personally have no update unless any of my commissioners have an update on this item. Okay, with that, we will move to item number 10, which is discussion and possible action on mapping consulting support. So that RFP closed on the 26th. I believe as of today, we only received 3 proposals. Yasmin can confirm that. I'm correct, 3?
Yes, that is correct. Okay.
Yes. I want to be honest, I was a little disappointed by only receiving 3. I think we need to recognize that this is a niche group. Redistricting happens only once every 10 years. To have the analytic sophistication to be able to draw new maps, it is a sophisticated, unique business. But having said that, I still thought that maybe we would receive more interest and have a greater competition. My concern about that is, regardless of what process we move forward with the hire, if there are 3 options, it lends itself to a harder hiring process for us 5. I don't know the 3 firms. They all may be outstanding and perfect, and it would be super easy. But I'm just looking at the numbers. And with that, I'd like to open up some conversation about what's in everybody's mind about moving forward with this mapping hire. I also want to say, in addition to my concern about only 3 proposals, the process through which we move to hire, do we want our new attorneys and team in place in advance, or are we willing to move through a hybrid model where we start with a process, switch legal teams in the middle? So I'm bringing this up because I think this is going to be our next and possibly our last very significant hire. There's questions about the process and the options of firms. And one of the silver linings that we discussed about the census delay was that we can embark on the hiring process with great thought and deliberation. And so I just ask that we bring that to the conversation about these next steps with hiring, with mapping. No decisions need to be made today, but we do need to begin to think about it. We have the state, procurement office that has been working towards, collecting the proposals. We have state staff that are on hold to help us go through that ranking process again. And so even though we don't need to make a decision, it's important that we think through how we might want to approach this.
So this is Commissioner York. A question for Rick Hughes. We set the guidelines for proposal acceptance. We intentionally around the 15-day cycle for every one of these positions we posted. I'm curious, can we extend the application on a proposal to future dates, or is that possible?
Commissioner York, are you asking the question about this particular RFP for mapping consultants?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the RFP closed. We can't extend the date now that 3 proposals have been received. I mean, we have some options in that if for some reason we're feeling like there was something missed, or if there's a possible proposer or responder who didn't propose based on something that was in the solicitation document, we could decide to cancel the solicitation and re-solicit, but we certainly have time. The offers are, they're valid for 180 days, so we can defer our evaluation of the proposals, if that's part of your question.
No, that wasn't, but that is a consideration.
This is Commissioner Meal. Can we now see the applications, and perhaps if we could see them prior to next Tuesday, we could have a short discussion Tuesday of a timeline going forward on how we might want to handle it, or even indeed if we think we ought to cancel and redo it. But it would be helpful to see what 3 proposed. And I have a feeling that we may not get more proposals if we had more time, that this is actually a very limited field.
Yeah, it struck us when we were looking into it as a field that would be limited. And, at some point we thought, that we might only get 1. So actually getting 3 was a little bit better news, we felt. But we can, the procurement supervisor that supervised that solicitation document preparation and putting it into the e-procurement system is John Redhorse. And I know John would be interested in speaking with you in advance of making the proposals available. So it can is there any way that we can arrange for that before next Tuesday? It could be done through email, just, sort of the mechanics of, here's the tool that we developed, probably would want to get your concurrence with it and everything prior to actually sharing the proposals that were received.
Sorry, I just want to jump in here and make clear that Rick is proposing, Mr. Hughes is proposing that the offers are disseminated to the commission. If you wanted to have a discussion of that at the next meeting, it would have to be noticed as an executive session on your next agenda.
This is Commissioner Lerner. I think the question was whether or not we feel we're not ready necessarily to do the evaluation, if I'm getting Commissioner Meal's question right, but more a matter of, do we have 3 proposals that we feel are qualified mapping consultants, since there was even concern about getting 1, because maybe those 3, we don't need more. Maybe it's not in numbers, but we just want to be sure we have high quality. Is that what we're getting at, Commissioner Meal? I may be mistaken.
Yes, it is.
So are you asking me the name of the proposers?
I'm asking if by next Tuesday we could see the proposals.
But not necessarily do the evaluation yet, right? Just to see.
Correct, just to see them. Or do we have to do the evaluation tool prior to seeing proposals? Are we back into that?
That is correct.
Well, there's an evaluation tool that was prepared, in advance. But we always like to get concurrence from the committee to be sure it's appropriate.
But it may be possible, though, Commissioner Meal, to view the 3 firms that submitted proposals, because when I did some research on my own to see the status of it, I was able to see 3 firms that I was not able to access the proposals, legally. But I think you could probably access which firms submitted them.
And I'm happy to share those names with you right now.
Please do, Rick. Yes, please do.
Yeah, so the 3 firms that we received proposals from, one was Haystack DNA LLC. Haystack is spelled HAYSTAQ, DNA LLC. The second proposal was received from Taylor English Decisions LLC. And then the third proposal was received from Timmons Group, TIMMONS Group.
Okay. Well, then if we could get a draft of an evaluation tool that we could all be looking at, that would be terrific.
Okay.
As we look into this, I understand this is a niche market. But having said that, the world has evolved in such a dramatic way where analytics is just, permeating every university and culture all over. And in essence, what we're looking for is information systems. And the idea that only 3 firms in the country can provide an independent commission this type of expertise, it just doesn't fully make sense to me. And again, the reason why I'm pushing this, I haven't even looked at the proposals, but to find consensus, it helps to have a broader array of choices. And if these 3 are fabulous, well, we'll make do with what's there. I just want to, do our due diligence that if there are other ways for other firms to throw their hat in or to open up competition, that just helps us. More options, more choices, more expertise only makes it easier for us to find candidates that'll best serve our cause.
Well, Madam Chair, this is Vice Chair Watchman. Going off of what you're saying, I'd be inclined to, close the bid and reopen, based on what you're saying. 3 to me is not enough, and there has to be more firms out there that can do the work for us. And so, in adherence with the Arizona procurement law, it sounds like closing it and then reopening might be the best course of action. And I don't know how wide the net is when it comes to sharing the RFP out there, and so there may be some firms that maybe aren't just connected, to the Arizona system. Although, all the 50 states will be going through this process. I think we need to cast the net as wide as we can. So, closing and starting up again, I think could get us more opportunities for more proposers.
One thing that I would suggest is if there are some firms that you may have envisioned would propose, then what we could do before we cancel the solicitation is discuss with those firms, propose why they didn't propose. Like, was there something restrictive or limiting in the solicitation document? Because we wouldn't want to repeat the process and then find there's still like the same 3 proposers if that turns out to be not adequate for review. We'd want to know a little bit more of why. One thing I'm pretty confident in, I can confirm with John after the meeting, but we didn't receive. Sometimes firms will actually respond with what's deemed a no bid, and they'll tell you what it was why they didn't really submit a proposal, what was lacking, if you will. We didn't get that sort of feedback. I'm almost 90% confident in that because I think I would have been told that. So we would we would want to explore the marketplace with you on your understanding of those firms that are out there, and not cancel the solicitation before and repost something before some additional exchange and dialogue with you.
But Rick, what would we do with that information? So let's say we learn from other firms why they didn't submit a formal proposal. What do we do then?
Well, then you can weigh your options. In other words, sometimes for I don't know what the demand is on the source of companies that work in this area. I'm not sure. I'm guessing that the redistricting efforts are happening in other places of the country. Sometimes firms just decide they can only make certain number of proposals. I've heard from companies that you expect to propose that they actually were overwhelmed with the options that were out there, and they just sort of selected where they thought fit best for them. And sometimes it's just geographic location and things like that. So it does help to understand better why someone didn't propose as you're making a decision about what proposals you did receive.
This is Commissioner Meal. I'm strongly inclined to support Derek on reposting, but having listened to Rick, I would be good with us doing nothing for a week or two while we pursue discussions with firms and coming back to Rick with any feedback we get, or firms that we think he should call to get feedback, and then revisit this and most likely repost.
And this is Commissioner Lerner. I would also rather hold off on any decision on this and do some work, some research as well, and see. There's 12, 15 other states doing redistricting, having redistricting commissions. So I kind of would like to do a little bit of homework on that and see where they are in the process. And if if we were all at the same time doing some proposals, that may have been part of the issue. Some may have already been selected, so they're not going to do more than one state. So I'd like to do some homework before we make a decision on this.
I fully support all of this. I mean, this is an important, robust discussion, and I think we need to do a lot more homework. And again, I come back to the fact that, in today's world of analytics, we shouldn't be this limited. But
Well, and Newberg, I agree that with the way things are with GIS and all, there should be more, but maybe not with elections. I mean, GIS gets to be a specialized field with, people specialize in particular areas. So there may just not be, as you mentioned earlier, may not be that many that have the experience of doing maps and drawing. They may have experience in GIS and analytics, but not in this particular area. And that may be part of the issue.
Right. Okay, thank you for this discussion. I think it's important and it's foreshadowing what's going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. And if our analytics that have now had their interest peaked, Arizona, is looking to hire. Any other further conversation on agenda item number 10? Okay, with that, we'll move to agenda item number 11, discussion and possible action on budget. I have nothing to add. Any questions, comments, feedback? Okay, with that, we'll move on to agenda item number 12, possible action on bill paying and incurred expenses. We do have a transcription expense, a Miller Certified Reporting LLC invoice dated March 23rd of last week. Can I entertain a motion to approve paying that invoice?
This is Vice Chair Watchman. Motion to approve the invoice as submitted and presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? With that, a vote to approve the bill paying to Miller Certified Reporting. Vice Chair Watchman?
Aye.
Commissioner Meal?
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner?
Aye.
Commissioner York?
Aye.
Commissioner Newberg is an aye. And with that, we move to pay our expense to Miller Certified Reporting. With that, we'll move on to agenda item number 13, discussion on ADOA resources and updates as it relates to IT, human resources, procurement, finance, and facilities. I don't personally have any updates on any of that outside of the fact that I hope that soon we all get badges and that we are going to meet in person. Whether it's in a month or two, who knows? Okay, no ADOA updates. With that, we'll move on to agenda item number 14, update, discussion, and possible action on Howard open meeting law complaint provided by AGOA legal counsel, including written response to the investigation inquiry. The commission may vote to go into executive session, which will not be open to the public, for the purpose of obtaining legal advice specifically related to the Howard open meeting law complaint ARS 38-431.03A3, for discussion or consideration of records exempt by law from public inspection, including the receipt and discussion of information or testimony that is specifically required to be maintained as confidential by state or federal law pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A2, as well as for consultation with attorneys regarding pending or contemplated litigation pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A4. And with that, Pam or counsel?
This is Pamela Pizer. Good morning. I guess my first question to the commission is, how much of this discussion would you like to do, if any, in open session? I can provide some information, but in terms of specifics, I think that would be much better to be done in executive session, as it would preserve attorney-client confidentiality.
Pam, if you don't mind, please just giving us an overview of what we plan to discuss in executive session and the rationale, just for the attorney-client conversation, and I don't think you'll have opposition.
So the purpose of discussing this in executive session would be to go over what the response plan is as to the complaint. For attorney-client privilege, when there are people who are not necessary to the conversation, it loses the confidentiality of it. So if we have the conversation in open session or with person ordinary, then there is no confidentiality should the commission choose to avail itself later of that in litigation. It wouldn't be there to avail because once the door is open, the horse is out of the barn, so to speak.
Okay, is there any overview that you would like to share with the public, or we can immediately go into executive session and give the public an overview after the fact?
Well, I would defer to the commission on how much of the overview they wish to make public. At this juncture, we're working with the commission on the response in terms of the specific strategy or pointed responses to the allegations that I would suggest would be better for executive session.
Okay. Any other further discussion, or do we have a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of obtaining legal counsel?
I will move into executive session for the purpose of obtaining legal counsel. This is Commissioner Lerner.
Do we have a second?
Commissioner York seconds.
Okay. Vote Commissioner Watchman,
Aye.
Meal,
Aye.
Lerner,
Aye.
York,
Aye.
Newberg is an aye, and with that, we will move to executive session. And for the public, I am anticipating that this will probably be, 10 plus 15 minutes, but not a significant amount of time. Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I see all commissioners. Pam, I see a P. Is that you?
Yes, it is. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's okay. I just want to make sure that our council is here and Yasmin is here. And with that, I believe we can move back into our general session. Thank you, council, for that update in executive session. Commissioner Neal, who was operating as interim chair under the complaint, has been in coordination with council to provide a response, and that is all in the appropriate cues. With that, unless there's other further comment, we'll move to agenda item number 15, which is discussion of future agenda item requests. In addition to what has already been discussed today, any other thoughts about items that we should consider adding to our agenda for next week? Okay, I don't personally have anything else to add as well, and I think our main agenda items will be on the legal front and continuing the mapping conversation. Okay, with that, we'll move to agenda item number 16, discussion and possible action on the scheduling of future meetings. We are slated for every Tuesday at 9 a.m. with no foreseeable changes in that schedule unless anybody would like to bring up any conflicts.
Chair Newberg?
Yes.
I was wondering if we've talked in the past about summer coming up, people maybe being gone for periods of time. I was wondering if there would be a way to create a Google Calendar for the commission, and it may be something we ask our executive director to do, where we could just place blocks on there that indicate we may not be available if we want to. It's still, if we're doing things virtually, even if we're not around, we can still be involved. But I just wondered if we wanted to start trying to compile that on a calendar that we have internally within our commission. That's all.
I see that as only additive, and I would like to extend it not just to summer, but you know, this is going to be a condensed year leading up to, you know, January, potentially up through March of 2022, and to have a sense of our collective conflicts well in advance, I think can only help us in scheduling. And in fact, in thinking about future scheduling, you know, when we think about December, late this year, you know, those are going to be incredibly busy, high demand times for the commission. And so to the extent that we can get on the same page and understand our collective working calendar in those times, just to refresh your memory from our conversation with the Secretary of State's office, in an ideal world, they gave us a date of January 2nd to have maps. And that's aspirational, but it's something that I genuinely, and I think we can collectively genuinely aspire to.
And Chair Newberg, I was also thinking, because we're going to want to be doing some, you know, travel and visits to places around the state, it might be helpful to start pulling that calendar together on when we might be able to set some times up for that as well. So that was part of my thought too.
Madam Chair, and I can get that started. I will create that today and I will share it with the commission.
Thank you very much. It's a great idea.
We're
Okay,
still on for next week, right?
Correct. Every Tuesday, 9 a.m.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm blocking out basically every Tuesday in the morning. So that way I do have conflicts here and there, but I do have that blocked out. A question that I have, for public hearings, in the past, were they in the day or in the evening time? Because some communities have, in terms of getting attendance and good attendance, I don't know if it's been during the day or in the evening time. It's a curious question that I have. And I haven't had time to look back at prior commission hearings, but I'm just curious about, how the prior commissions approach that.
You know what? I think that's an excellent point when we get out there, around the state to provide opportunities for people at all different times of the day to share public comment. I mean, 9 a.m. is not necessarily convenient for everybody. 9 to 12, I do know that that's a frustration with the public comments about wanting to expand our website to have comment outside of these narrow windows. I think that's something that we ought to be thoughtful about with what works for the state. And having our general calendars in advance where we have the unique opportunities to, dive into those, other hours that aren't in the morning with enough advance notice, I think we'll be able to.
Commissioner Meal, I do think that next week interviewing the legal firms is going to push our timing. And we're going to, I assume, have to still be aware, are we going to have a 4-hour shut off on YouTube? And
Yeah.
so we're really going to have to hold to our timing and limit the discussion of any other topics.
So I've actually been working on that, and I think I might be able to extend it to 8 hours. I'm still working on that, but I'm working on that, and hopefully I'll be able to accomplish that by the end of today.
Thank you. And with that, if we're not able, we can maybe strategically plan for a second meeting like we did with the executive director position, where if we needed to reconvene in the afternoon, we could, having the benefit of hopefully listening to the attorneys. It would be great for us to be able to finish that conversation and deliberate and come to conclusions. So to be able to have the sufficient time to do so. So for the fellow commissioners, for next Tuesday, if there are conflicts in your schedule, even though we're slated for the morning hours, let's say 9 to 1, if you can, maybe hold off on scheduling your day, and let's see what we can schedule in the next 24 hours. It would be helpful in case of an as-needed basis, we can carve into those other hours in the afternoon. Okay. With that, I think we can move on to item 17, announcements, next meeting date. It is next Tuesday, 9 a.m., April 6th, I believe. Yes, April 6th at 9 a.m. And with that, we move to agenda item number 18, closing of public comments. Please note, members of the commission may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. And with it, I thank everybody for everybody's time, and we will move to agenda item number 19, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn, Commissioner York.
Do I have a second?
Commissioner Watchman seconds.
With that, a vote. Vice Chair Watchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Meal.
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner.
Aye.
Commissioner York.
Aye.
Commissioner Newberg is an aye. And with that, I look forward to seeing everybody next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Thank you, everybody, for your time and effort.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Have a good day.